This is the People Podcast, a podcast at the intersection of business and human resources, where listeners gain invaluable insights of workplace management. Hosted by experts with a deep understanding of HR's pivotal role in organizational success. So tune in and embark on a journey to unlock the full potential of your business. This is the People Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the People. I'm your host, Jessica Judd. Today we have a special guest, Belinda Van Fleet, the COO of Smart Resources. Belinda will share her inspiring career journey and offer valuable insights and advice for women navigating the workforce. Whether you're starting your career or looking to advance, you won't want to miss Belinda's words of wisdom. Let's dive in.
I'm born and raised in South Africa. When I left school, I decided to go traveling in Europe. So I backpacked around Western Europe for 5 months. And then I went back home to Cape Town and decided to do my little piece of military service. I joined the South African Army for 1 year of full-time military service. When that was finished, I went to the University of Cape Town and got myself a bachelor's degree in the liberal arts. My majors were English and French and Italian. My career course that I had planned was to join the diplomatic service and be a cadet in whatever embassy they assigned me to around the world somewhere. So This was why I chose the language courses, along with things like, political science and cultural history of Western Europe and those sorts of subjects. And I I had a few people that I knew in positions of influence. One of them was actually the mayor of Cape Town, his secretary. And so in my final year, just before I was to write my final, I said, well, how would you like to go and have tea with the Deputy Director of Foreign Affairs, Director General of Foreign Affairs? And I said, well, that would be lovely. And of course, really what this was sort of an informal job interview,
Right.
And so off I went and sat down, had a lovely visit and a nice cup of tea with the Deputy Director General. And at that time, this was the early 80s, there was a lot of political turmoil in South Africa and, lots of division and so on. And so I always have been of strong opinions and did not approve of and support the standpoints of the South African government at the time, which was, as the world knows it, the apartheid government. And so I said to the deputy director, what is the responsibility of being this diplomatic cadet? And he said, you're going to liaise and mix and mingle and build relationships and such with the people in the host country, and you would need to be able to support and explain and clarify whenever the government puts out a statement or changes position on something. And I said, okay, well, what if I don't agree? He says, well, you have to agree. You're there to represent the government. I said, well, I refuse. I will not support, and, I will not support something that I do not agree with. There are many things I don't agree with. And off I went on my little tangent. And we had a lovely rest of our cup of tea. And then he said, well, it was nice to meet you. And off I went. Well, that was the end of my diplomatic career in the South African diplomatic service. My first job ended up being, after graduating, I went to work for a staffing agency in Cape Town. And that was where my career in staffing began. And I actually started a new desk for them, which was the technical services desk, because their focus had been, up to that point, had been clerical headhunting, executive positions, accounting and such. So that was my first real job after graduating. And it was not where I thought I was going to land.
How did you navigate yourself into the staffing industry? How did that happen?
I had a friend who actually worked for that agency. She was a recruiter for them. She knew that I was newly graduated from University of Cape Town, and she said, they are hiring with this agency, and would I be interested in speaking to the owner to see if this was something that I would be interested in pursuing. So it was really just a networking opportunity that popped up very randomly, and it's I don't believe it's coincidental, but at the time it seemed to be, and that's how I got started in it.
Cape Town, you're a young white woman. What was your experience like entering the workforce? What challenges did you experience during those days?
South Africa is very conservative still today, not progressive, more so progressive today than it was 35 odd years ago, where women were not by any means treated equally in the workplace or otherwise. Certainly not women of color, and most definitely also not white women. So the race thing there, I would say it's a primary issue. The secondary issue was the male-female, the sex thing in the workplace. So it was hard. It was very difficult. I had to deal with a lot of challenges. We all did, those of us who wanted to pursue a professional career. Women were naturally put into the support roles, such as clerical roles, those sorts of administrative support roles. They were not seen in leadership roles at all. You basically saw white men in leadership roles in that time. So it was difficult.
So you've done really, really well professionally. How did you navigate that? How did you get where you are today?
I ended up coming to the United States. It was not a career plan. It was a personal decision. I married an American Marine who was detached to the State Department and was doing his duty at the U.S. Embassy in Cape Town. And we ended up getting married, and the decision we had to make was, because he was up to either re-enlist or retire from the Marine Corps, retire and we stay in South Africa, or does he re-enlist and we go to wherever he's reassigned, which was Camp Pendleton in California. And so we decided that we would have him re-enlist and he would continue his career in the Marines, which obviously then meant that I was going to come to the United States. And I lived in California for the first 20 years that I was in the US. I applied for a position as a branch manager with a very, very, very large day labor organization. And I got the position. I applied for a position as a branch manager with an organization at the time that was known as Labor Ready. Today, they are under the banner of True Blue, and the brand is now the People Ready brand. But that's how I started my trajectory in management in the staffing industry in the United States. And it went from one opportunity to the next. I was blessed to be very successful in my endeavors. I always delivered excellent results, and it was noticed by senior leadership. And from that branch manager position, I was moved into a district manager position, and from there into a VP of sales position for labor finders. The career progressed over a period of time to where I am today.
What advice would you give young women that are entering the workforce and looking to find their feet in corporate America?
I think corporate America is a brutal environment and highly competitive. I think that a woman who wants to progress and excel in corporate leadership in the United States needs to be very focused. They need to understand that the challenge is greater for them than it is for their peers, the people that they will be working with. And it will require them to remain very steadfast and not be discouraged. They must understand that the corporate world is one that is driven by dollars and cents, and all their efforts need to be directed towards being able to prove themselves as being assets to their employers, so that the employers can see what a great return on their investment they have in these women. And from this position, these women will be given opportunities to move up in the organization. I would say that a young woman starting out on a corporate career in America needs to understand that even though there are laws that require the playing field to be even in all aspects, that they will still encounter challenges. They will still find themselves in situations from time to time where there are double standards, where there is discrimination against them because they are not part of a certain group. And this is going to require them to remain steadfast, to not be dissuaded, to not lose hope. They are going to need to fight for their position at the table, and they must command the respect of the others around the table. And that means that they need to know their game. They need to be better than everyone else at their game. And they need to deliver results. And if they are strong and dynamic and they understand that this is what is required of them, they're going to get to the top.
For sure. I think an example I can think of, my key piece of advice would be to focus on the big picture and not get lost in the little things. So
Yes.
as a woman in the workforce, sometimes you'll come across instances where you'll be asked for your advice, you'll give an answer, and then it'll be dismissed. And then the following week, you'll hear the exact same thing come out of a male colleague's mouth, and suddenly this is the best idea we've ever heard. Taking ego out of it is really important, and being confident that you're aware of your own skill sets and what you bring to the table, I think helps. Funny little things I've experienced. I was working in New York City. It was my first ever director level position. And I was in an executive meeting, and one of my nails had broken. So I was nervously peeling at it during a meeting. Wasn't disrupting anyone, wasn't anything major. And the next day, the person I reported to, which was a COO at the time, calls me into his office and says that he wants me to understand how important it is that I present as an executive. So he has gone and gotten me a gift card to get my nails done. I've told people this story and they've said, "Oh, that's really nice." And it's not, and I'll tell you why. I couldn't tell you what the fingernails of the men sitting at that table looked like. And I'm pretty sure he couldn't either. It's interesting that for me as a woman, the focus was on the aesthetic. And it wasn't like I was wearing disheveled clothes or wasn't dressed appropriately. We're talking about a broken nail. That was of importance to him, to the extent that it was a conversation that we had. And I can guarantee that he would never have approached any of my male colleagues and discussed their manicures with them. It's just not something that would have happened.
Yes.
And that's going back to I'm a professional. I'm results driven. I'm got a place at the table, which is hard to explain to people because they'll say, "Well, how are there barriers for women when you had a place at the table?" And I think to your point, if you work really hard, you will earn your spot there, but you have to anticipate that I'm not sure the world has gotten to a place yet where there aren't unconscious biases there.
I agree. There are certainly, those biases are most definitely unconscious and subconscious, I should say, and they are sometimes very deeply buried, and people have no idea that they're actually biased in those ways. What is true is, and it's always been true, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And it's especially true in the corporate executive world. And people have used the term the old boys club throughout the years. The old boys club still exists. And the old boys club in many companies is alive and well. The culture of the company will determine how alive and well the club is. And that old boys club is the exact opposite of equality in the workplace. And women cannot join that club. So where in some organizations one can see that there are men that are perhaps given opportunities that for which they are not the most qualified candidate, it would be given to them before someone else because they have relationships with the people who either make the decisions or influence those who make the decisions. And for a woman, this is not one of the cards that she has in her deck. For a woman, the only way to get that place around the table is by, if you do it the right way, is by purely ability and results. So that's hard. That's hard because you can't fight those other dynamics. You can't fight them. And if you're in an environment where that is how things work in that company, then you need to, if you're a woman, you need to leave and go and find another company with a better culture.
I think that's key right there, Belinda, is acknowledging the reality of where you're at. We can try to position ourselves, like you said, you're not invited to that club, and it's not even necessarily something that they are consciously aware of.
Absolutely.
But you are just going to be banging your head against a brick wall, and I think it's much more productive to look for your place within an organization that maybe doesn't have those roadblocks in place. You're the COO at Smart Resources. You're overseeing trades, search, staffing, crews, and now smart HR and consulting. Talk to me a little bit about how it is that you're creating that cultural environment where women have a place at the table, and not only do they have that place, but they have the same loudspeaker that the men would.
Well, the company culture starts at the very top. Let me start by saying that. And I feel that it's very important to acknowledge that the CEO of Smart Resources, Ted Broman, is the person who drives this all-embracing, all-encompassing culture that enables us to all flourish. So let me start by saying that. The second point that I want to make is, in our organization, we do not have seats for people who cannot or who will not be aligned with us culturally, whether they're male or female, or whatever their orientation is. It's all about being respectful to everybody around the table, number one, and number two, about their ability to contribute towards the success of the organization. And so the women that are part of our organization are all very competent and very accomplished. They're very competent, they are very accomplished, and have earned their seat at the table when they come to our company. I believe, I have always believed, and I feel it's part of my mission in life, if you will, that everybody has a voice. Everybody should be respected for what they believe, for who they are, for their convictions, for their views. And I believe that diversity is where strength lies in an organization. So for me, it's a very important thing, and it comes naturally that everybody has their voice. Everybody's opinion counts. And the hard thing for me is that I know that most people who come to our organization are not used to having that voice from wherever they've hailed, because it's so common for companies to not have a constructive and open and embracing culture. And so I find very often that people who come into our organization are afraid to say something, because in the past, when they have voiced their opinion, they have been punished for it. And it usually takes a while for them to get to a point where they are comfortable and they understand that they can trust and that they do have the ability to speak and have their voices heard. So it's something, it's a culture that starts with our CEO, and it is one that is supported by myself. And I feel in my career, if I was able to create an environment for women where they did not have to be afraid to be who they are and be afraid to say something because it could negatively impact their career, then I feel that I have created a legacy.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the things I loved most about when I first came on, was when you were first assigned the COO role. And it was really refreshing for me to see a woman be in that place. But as you mentioned, Ted, our CEO, is just phenomenal in managing people and knowing how to bring out the best in talent. So I think a big part of his success has been in trust. So within our organization, we are given that voice. We're given the chance to prove ourselves. And it's results based. So you're not second guessing yourself and have I said this right? Have I said this wrong? Or going with just the status quo. You're allowed to push back, which I think is imperative for change and for growth. It stops us getting stuck in the mindset of this is what we've always done, so we're going to keep doing it. I feel like we've kind of really created a culture where the fear is out of the way, and you get better results that way, I think.
Yes, absolutely. And it takes a while for people who come into the organization to embrace that, because they are automatically in self-preservation and in survival mode, because they've had to be. They've been forced to go there.
Absolutely. Especially, again, I really do think that's something that is maybe not predominantly, but is very much a part of everyday life as a woman. Because again, the having a voice and being heard is sometimes harder for us than it is our male counterparts.
Yes.
So yeah, you're vulnerable. You come in and we're told you've got a voice, you can push back, tell us what you think. And it's hard because you run into so many companies that have mission statements on the wall and they promote a culture of inclusivity. But when push comes to shove, that's not actually
welcomed. Yes,
exactly. It's not what's happening behind closed doors. Yeah. So to summarize, what you've outlined for us all is building that culture. It means selecting for talent regardless of gender, creating an atmosphere where everyone has a voice, gaining your employees' trust.
Yes.
And you were saying starting from the top down, so practicing what you preach and really living and demonstrating what it is we stand for.
Absolutely. And I think what's also often lost in translation when it comes to companies and their culture and their mission statements and such is that, these intentions might be honorable at the executive level, and then somehow the message gets lost from the executive level down to where the rubber meets the road out in the field, and your frontline managers, and they don't understand. They are not taught what that culture means in practical terms, and how they should guide and lead their team members if they truly are going to live that culture. And so it's very, very important to me that we, with ongoing education, such as we have our Smart University, we have our HR team always involved with this sort of thing, is we've got to make sure that that message gets down to the field managers so that they can live it with their teams.
Right. Tell me a little bit about your time in the military and how that contributed towards your approach in the workforce today.
Well, that's a very good question. And let me tell you something. There's nothing in the military that supports any of the inclusive culture and the anybody having a voice. Just to make that clear from the beginning, it's the exact opposite. And as a result, I will tell you that year that I spent in the military was quite clearly for me, when I look back on my life, probably the most difficult year that I had to, that path that I had to walk as a grown-up, as an adult. That was the hardest year for me, because I was a peon. I was a robot. I was a drone. I could not say anything. It had nothing to do with whether I had any brains or not, or knew a better way. It was mechanical. It was forced down your throat. And the people in leadership positions in the military were, with exception, were not qualified to hold those positions. But they were in positions of authority because of how the military works, which is tenure will give you seniority, and with seniority comes leadership roles where you're directing people. And so I can tell you that the year I spent in the military was a brilliant education for me in my years as I've gone on in my career, of how not to manage, how not to lead, because it was dismal. I was miserable, and I really, really struggled. But here's the good side of the military experience, which was it taught me unwavering and non-negotiable discipline to continue, to stay the course, to not stop, to not give up, to not throw in the towel. I had no choice. I had to continue, and I had to reach the goal, and that I value more than anything, I think, in probably the rest of my career, because it has taught me to never give up. And because I have never given up, I have managed to reach my goals.
That's awesome. It was like a crash course in what not to do.
Absolutely. It was a very, very interesting year of tremendous growth, but it was a horrible, horrible year. But I will say, if I had to do it over again, I would do it over again.
Off the back of this, part of at Smart Resources, we have the give back value that we try and encompass and live by. A good example of that with you is you did that 1 year, and you with torture, but to this day you're still supporting Veterans Affairs. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing there.
Yes. Well, I love veterans. Anybody in any country, in any military force that is willing, and in some cases where there was conscription. In South Africa for many years there was conscription, so people didn't, just like in Vietnam, the Vietnam era here in the United States, they didn't have a choice. These young men and women, well, I don't know if women were conscripted. In South Africa they were not. I don't believe they were in the United States, but the young men were. And they had to go and fight a war that was caused by money-hungry, power-mongering politicians on, doesn't matter which side of the fence. That's what causes wars. And these young men, so many of them, had to witness the most awful horrors, and so many of them never made it back home. And to me, it's the ultimate. A soldier that has to go and fight a war is the ultimate hero to me. They made the ultimate sacrifice. Some of them didn't come back home. Those who did come back home, many of them live with awful, awful memories, and memories that have impacted them very, very profoundly for the rest of their lives. Many of those people were never able to overcome the trauma of what they saw in the war. And to me, I find that absolutely devastating and heartbreaking, that any human being, we're all, I think, intrinsically good human beings. We value life. We don't go out with the attitude of, well, let's see who we can kill today. And I think it is so against the grain for us as humans to go out and have to kill other human beings that we don't know. We don't know who they are. And, we see this with the veterans in Iraq and in the Middle East and all the different conflicts in the Middle East today. So I am a part of a military veterans organization. I'm also a member of the American Legion Post 19 in Lehigh. My son is in the United States Air Force, and so I am what they call an auxiliary member. But to me, even though I never saw combat, and I'm very, very, very grateful for that I never saw combat, I'm acutely aware and informed of what sort of experiences those veterans that did see combat have. And my heart is deeply committed to trying to do whatever I can with the talents and the abilities that I have and the time that I have to, in any way that I possibly can, support and be there to show my appreciation for those veterans who sacrificed so much of themselves and of their lives, whether they are still with us or not, for these causes that they had no control over, that in the end, so many of the situations, they were resolved, and in the end, these veterans come back and they feel, well, what did I suffer for? What was this all for? And I feel that is a terrible thing for them to have to live with. It causes a lot of bitterness, and rightly so. And I have tremendous respect for all veterans of all nations. So that's why I'm involved.
Okay, so let's talk about the future. What are you aiming for in the next 5 years? And ultimately, what will success look like when you retire professionally? What would you like to have accomplished?
I would like to be a part of the team and the effort that takes this organization, Smart Resources, and makes it a $150 million organization. We are on the road to that goal, and I know that with the individuals, the talent, the passion, the experience, the leadership that we have in this organization, I would like to be part of what will then be considered a success in the organization, because we have a tremendous group of talented, ambitious, passionate, career-focused people in our organization who are looking up to us, the leadership team, and are saying, I want to be there one day. I want to be COO one day. I want to be CEO one day. I want to be president one day. And I want to be part of the machine, the organization.
Welcome to another episode of The People. I'm your host,
makes that
Jessica.
a reality for them. So that is my goal. I hope to be able to continue until we reach that goal. And I'm confident that the trajectory that we are on as a company, that we will achieve that goal in just the next few years.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of The People. We hope you enjoyed hearing from Belinda Van Fleet as much as we did. Her journey from South Africa during apartheid to her military service and leadership in the corporate world is truly inspiring. If you found value in today's discussion, please subscribe to our podcast and leave a review. Your feedback helps us bring more insightful and inspiring stories to you. Don't forget to follow us on social media for updates on future episodes and join our community of professionals dedicated to making a difference in the workplace. Until next time, remember, every career story is unique and every bit of wisdom shared brings us all one step closer to success. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of The People.